All right, we are here to talk a little sexual health today. I'm excited to bring in Jenna Perkins. She is a women's health and gender related nurse practitioner serving the DMV area. For those that don't know, DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. She's from Detroit, which we just talked about. We have that in common. Well, I lived in Detroit for a little bit. I'm not from Detroit. She completed her BSN and MSN in women's health at the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing. And her career as a nurse practitioner launched in downtown DC, where she became an expert in urology, urogyne, sexual health, and pelvic health disorders. And she owns Discover Health in Alexandria, which helps women tame their most taboo concerns. Jenna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us today.
It's going to be a ride.
Yeah, I hope so. So, we're physical therapy that focuses on people who like to be active and exercise. So I always like to ask, if you could only do one form of exercise for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I'm going to be annoying and give you two.
Great.
The first one is diaphragmatic breathing. I know that people don't consider breathing as like a typical form of exercise, but it is essential to the functions of the pelvis. So that includes bladder health, bowel health, sexual health, pain management. So learning to breathe is an essential exercise that I like to teach all of my clients. And then the next one is dancing, especially anything that allows you to move the hips. So the type of work that I do, really accessing that very sensual part of yourself is something that can be cut off for a lot of my clients. And so tapping into that space and just allowing your hips to move freely is fun and a great form of exercise.
I love both of those. We, especially our pelvic floor experts, teach diaphragmatic breathing to almost all of our clients. So we're on the same page with that. And I also love dance because I think people too often think of exercise as going to the gym or running and just giving people options of things that they actually enjoy. Like you said, I think that's awesome. So I love both of those. Do you dance yourself?
I don't, I mean, I dance in my mirror. I dance with my friends and my family, but no formal dancing. But it really does spark joy for me. And whenever I can access joy, I know I'm in the right place.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit. Who is the type of person that you like to help the most?
Yeah. So, like you said, I help women tame their most taboo concerns. So, things like having pelvic pain for sure, hormone conditions. So, PCOS, perimenopause, menopause, because you have hormone receptors all throughout the body and they affect you head to toe. So, I love the most challenging clients. So, hormones, pelvic health, weight management, I love because again, it is influenced by hormones. And then the women who are like, okay, now that I'm feeling better, I want to quote unquote glow up. I want to look as good as I feel. So, really, those complicated women who have been seeing five, six, seven providers and are just not feeling like themselves and they want to feel like themselves again, though, that's my clientele.
That's great. You say taboo quite a bit in this and also your messaging. Why do you think these things are so taboo and why are you so passionate about breaking that's a taboo?
Yeah, why are they taboo? I mean, we can blame almost everything on the patriarchy, right? So I think that as a society, we close ourselves off to ourselves, right? So the more connected you are to yourself, the more you are able to heal from these conditions like incontinence, like painful intimacy. And when you don't have that access to heal, right? If you don't have that ability to heal, it just becomes more and more taboo. So women start to feel like it is their fault that they can't have comfortable sex, or it is their fault that, they are experiencing dryness, or something is wrong with them, or that they are broken. And so I really like to care for the most vulnerable among us. So really the people that nobody else wants to see, I'm like, okay, bring them to me. Like, let me see if I can put the pieces of the puzzle together. I really like to recognize patterns. And I've been doing this work for so long that I am able to recognize patterns in quote unquote complex cases. So they don't necessarily always feel that complex to me. So I love the challenge of being able to help someone who feels like they have no options, they have no choices, that they are being discarded by the traditional healthcare system, and to step in and say, actually, no, like here is something that is very simple and actionable that we can start and get you on the path to healing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, simple and approachable, I think, is so important because, especially like you said, if someone's seen five or six providers, or if they themselves think that their issue is taboo, sometimes a complex solution is just too much. So, giving people a small win right away, I think, is awesome.
Yeah. And the things that contribute to it being taboo are the facts that a lot of providers are not educated in hormone health, for instance, or bladder health or pelvic pain. Most providers are not trained in these very complex things. And so women might be going to their provider saying, like, hey, I'm having accidents, I'm peeing my pants, or sex hurts. But if you don't have a provider that's equipped with the knowledge and the tools to be able to give them the transformation they need, then they feel like, well, I have to again turn this inward. It is something on me. And so that just contributes to it being taboo.
Yeah, and I think just the more we have these conversations, whether it's women, whether it's men, whether it's gender neutral, I just think the more we have these conversations, the more empowered people can be to say, oh, you know what? I can actually talk about this and I don't have to hold it inside anymore. And something like as simple as I was talking to another sexual health provider and she was saying there's so many things that I wouldn't think about, obviously, but a lot of people don't think about. You go for a gynecology exam and like you're totally draped, everything is covered, and even small things like that just it reinforces the notion that this is a private thing and we shouldn't talk about it and we need to cover these things up. So I love you
Mhm.
and anyone like you that's just kind of bringing light to everything like this.
One of my favorite things to do with my clients is to hand them a mirror to say, listen, it's yours, it's not mine, right? Like, this is not a dogmatic relationship. I am not telling you what to do with your body. I am introducing you to your body and letting you have the tools to be able to heal your body. And we even take it one step further where we use a camera. Typically, we use this camera to look at the cervix to see for signs of cervical cancer, but we use this camera to look at the vulva so that we can really explore the vulvar tissue and see if there are other things that could be contributing to your pain, itching, dryness. And so when women are seeing themselves up close and personal and really like, okay, whoa, I didn't know that my pee came from that place. Like that gives you a sense of ownership over your body that allows you to operate in the world in a much different way than sometimes we can be victimized by our condition. And once you know yourself, then you can heal.
That's great. Yeah, I love any message that brings power to people, like internal power rather than relying on other people. So I think that's great. So you kind of already started to touch on it, but I think one thing I like to know is how do you help people? And I think one good way to spread that message is do you have any recent success stories of someone who might have been struggling to get help elsewhere? And how did you help them? And where did they come from? And what can they do now? Or how is their life different?
Oh, yeah. I saw five this morning. But one I really like, let me highlight perimenopause story. So I have a woman, she was in her early 40s and just feeling, again, like she was not herself. And I always like to ask this question of like, if I had a magic wand and I can make you feel better, like what would you achieve out of our relationship? And she said, I really just want to feel like me again. And so I saw her today for a follow-up visit. And in that initial visit, she was having all of these kind of like vague symptoms to her. She was having hair loss, vision changes, her skin was different, acne, weight gain. And she ended up coming to me referred by her pelvic floor physical therapist because her relationship was such that she just felt like things were going to end because she was not able to be intimate with her partner any longer. And so we started out talking about intimacy, talking about sex. This is what we can do for dryness. This is what we can do for pain. But we ended up talking more about hormones and perimenopause because I was letting her know it's all connected. The hair loss you're experiencing, the melasma on your face, the weight gain, the mood changes, the irritability, it is all connected and it's not in your head. You're not making it up. So we did some local hormones to the vagina and she was now having like natural lubrication, pain-free intimacy with her partner. We started her on some systemic hormones and all of like the joint pain she was experiencing, the brain fog. She felt like her skin was better, less dry, less itchy. And so overall, she's like, okay, some of the things that she was experiencing, she didn't even know that or acknowledge that they were really bothering her. And so when you can really take a holistic approach to care and not just focus on the sex and the pelvic pain and really think about all of these other things, I was pretty easily able to be like, okay, and also we're going to do a estrogen patch and some progesterone in addition to the pelvic care. And she said to me, like, you've helped to change my life. I feel like me again. So that's the success story.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think what maybe stuck with me the most about that story is the fact that she came to you and said, I don't feel like me and I want to feel like me. And the reason I think that's so powerful is because if she had gone to maybe most providers in her life, if she had said, I don't feel like me, they might have brushed her off and said, that doesn't really mean anything. And they might have said, well, this is just normal part of aging. Or whereas you actually said, oh, let's talk about that a little bit more, or let's dive into that. And I think it's really powerful for someone to kind of give her the power to say how she's feeling and not just dismiss. If I went to my primary care and said, I don't feel like me, I don't know what would happen with that conversation.
He probably would laugh at you because he's like, one, I don't know you. So what So I think the reason that I'm able to get the transformation is because I have time and I'm able to give people space to start to connect the dots. And we do a lot of education in that initial consult of like, this is how hormones function. This is how they work in every single part of the body. Tell me what you're feeling. I'll tell you how your hormones are contributing to the discomfort. But you can't do that in a 5-minute visit. You just can't. And the way that our healthcare system is set up, it is so that a primary care provider or someone working in a traditional healthcare system, you got to see 15, 20, 30 people every day just to keep the doors open. So you aren't able to do the deep dive that is really necessary to educate clients, to give them the control over their body, to have them on board and say, okay, I want to take this next step and heal.
Yeah, and I mean, we have the exact same philosophy and exact same approach. So I couldn't appreciate that even more. Like traditional physical therapy, you're running through 12, 15 people a day. Just no time to actually talk about things. You're focused more on doing things rather than just like listening and understanding. So I think what you just said, finding a provider that gives you time, and also I think a really powerful word you just said is give you space. Sometimes if I'm talking to my primary care physician, I know I got to get my words out really quickly. And then I don't have time to think about what I'm saying. Whereas if you're giving people time, sometimes I'm just going to talk through things and you're allowing them, they might start their sentence in one place and 3 sentences later, they're in a totally different place.
And then it's my job just to connect the dots.
Yep.
Like, oh, you said you're having hot flashes and night sweats. Well, this is how it's connected to your bladder symptoms. This is how they are connected to the pain that you're experiencing with intimacy. This is how it's connected to your weight gain and your skin changes.
Yep. And you mentioned menopause, you mentioned hormones. One thing I've been seeing recently, more related to my field, is how much menopause, perimenopause is actually contributing to musculoskeletal pain that I don't think anybody really realized until maybe recently, or maybe it was just me that didn't realize. Can you talk a little bit more about menopause, hormones related to musculoskeletal pain?
Yeah, absolutely. You have hormone receptors in your joints, right? So estrogen is really going to be protective and help build collagen in those joints. When you are experiencing estrogen loss, then you will have that subsequent stiffness and joint pain. We call it musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause. When I see a woman and she's like, because we have space and because we have time, and she's telling me about all of these other things that she doesn't necessarily see a connection, and she's like, yeah, I've been in rehab for my frozen shoulder. I'm like, oh yeah, frozen shoulder, that's a hallmark sign of perimenopause and menopause. I have a friend who's a chiropractor. I'm like, send your ladies over who are having joint pain because it could be hormone changes.
So have you seen people not have success in chiropractic and physical therapy, and then all of a sudden they, get put on estrogen or some other hormone and like pretty quickly see improvement?
Absolutely. And a lot of people, again, who aren't even acknowledging the stiffness or the joint pain because it feels kind of like just subtle, right? And then you put them on hormones and they're like, I was having joint pain. I didn't even know it. Now I can put my bra on without a problem. What's up with that?
Yeah, we hear that all the time. And I think what happens is people, or if something happens slowly, if decline happens slowly, or if something's been going on for a long time, they almost normalize it. Like you said, I couldn't put my bra on normally. Well, if that's happened slowly over time, or if it's been going on for 3 years, you just kind of start to accept it. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, once that goes away, you're like, oh, wow, my life is totally different. And I didn't even realize how much I was working around this pain, or like you said, my sex life, or something like that.
And a lot of people are bringing it up to providers. But again, if you don't have a provider that understands the connection, they're like, oh, well, that's just aging. You're 40 something now. You're 50 something now. That's just like, that is the way that it is. And then the clients are like, well, I talked to my doctor about it and like, it is what it is now. And I have to live with this and accept it. But the truth is, you don't. And a lot of the things we attribute to aging is actually hormone decline.
So, if somebody's listening and they kind of resonate a little bit with the message, what's one thing, or maybe they don't resonate and maybe they're not sure, what's one thing someone can think about or do to understand whether they might be able to be helped by you or a provider like you, or hormone therapy or things like that?
Yeah, specifically for the hormone loss, I created a website and a checklist. It's menopauschecklist.com. So even if you're in your 30s or 40s and you feel like you have these vague symptoms and maybe they are related to menopause, you can go to menopauschecklist.com and then it's like 40 plus symptoms of things that you might be experiencing, and you get a result and you can take that to your provider. And that's a much different conversation in the 5 to 15 minutes that you have if you're saying like, I'm experiencing these symptoms of hormone loss. So I would start there. And then I would say, if you are in physical therapy, if you are seeing a urologist, if you're seeing all of these different providers who are working in silos, because that's how we're taught, right? But looking for somebody to kind of put the pieces together and figure out the puzzle of you, then I think that you could definitely benefit from our services.
That's great. I actually didn't even know you had that checklist. That's awesome. I think what I like the most about that is it gives people power to come into their provider and say, "Hey, I've got these things," and it's a much better conversation that way rather than the provider just kind of blowing you off. You can say, "No, no, I've got all of these things," and it just allows that person to have a little bit more power in that conversation.
Or waiting for your provider to ask you these things, they don't have time. And again, if they have not been taught the tools to treat it, then they probably aren't going to ask the questions. So going in there and saying, like, this is a focus visit, these are the things that I want to focus on, that definitely can change the outcome.
That's great. So we talked about the word taboo a few times, and usually when there's taboo things, there's a lot of misinformation in that area because we don't talk about it enough. So, what's one of the biggest misconceptions or myths that you like to talk to your clients about that you think makes a big impact when they understand that, oh, maybe this thing isn't true?
Yeah, I would say that menopause is a disease for old women, and take it even step further and say that it's a disease for old white women because it's just not true. Half the population, if you live long enough, you will experience menopause. Menopause just means that you have gone one calendar year, so 12 months without a bleed. But the menopause transition could be a decade. It's longer for women of color, Black women in particular. So it could be 10 years of you experiencing these symptoms before your period actually stops. So if menopause is happening on average around 51, 52, at 41, if you're coming in with these kind of nondescript bladder, weight gain, skin issues, it might be perimenopause. So that's what I would highlight is that if you are being told that you're too young and that you're still getting a period and nothing is wrong with you, that is not true. You could still be experiencing the symptoms of hormone decline long before your hormones are completely shutting down your cycle.
That's probably really powerful information to know. And again, take to your provider if you're not being heard. So, on that same note, we see health trends come and go all the time, whether it's nutrition, fitness, physical therapy. Health trends always come and go. What do you think right now is a health trend in your area that probably overrated?
Ooh, an overrated health trends. I would say probably doing cardio until you're ready to pass out,
And what?
especially for women as you're trying to like think through hormones. You don't want to be stressing your body out. You don't want to be getting all of that cortisol because it's not working for you. It's not working in your favor. It can be working against you actually. And so focusing on strength building and really getting your muscles to bulk up because we know that naturally you will lose muscle, year over year if we don't actively try to combat that. So I would say focusing on cardio and trying to be thin is definitely something that is overrated. Like you need to be strong, not necessarily thin.
Yeah, I mean, I love that message of being strong. I think that applies to almost everybody, but especially as we age, especially women, muscle loss accelerates really rapidly. So the stronger you are, going into aging or as you're aging, continuing strength training, there's just so much research that shows how much impact it makes on the quality of life as you age.
And muscles are super protective against cardiovascular disease, right? It helps with prevention of prediabetes and diabetes, which we see a lot of that prediabetes in populations where your hormones are changing. So, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, postmenopause. And estrogen is something that actually helps to sensitize insulin. So, insulin is that hormone that takes the sugar, the energy, the blood glucose, takes it out of your bloodstream, puts it into your muscles, for instance. If you don't have estrogen on board, insulin has to work very hard. And then we have insulin resistance, aka prediabetes or diabetes, and that is a risk factor for heart disease, which is the number one killer of women.
Okay. So it sounds like, and I'm learning a lot from this conversation, even though I'm in the health field, it sounds like estrogen, or really hormones in general, impacts cardiovascular, it impacts muscular health, it impacts sex life. Like, maybe this is just overstating it. Is there a reason that all women shouldn't be on estrogen?
I don't think that estrogen is for every woman. It definitely has some side effects and it depends on the type of estrogen that you're using. Your estrogen that you find, the synthetic estrogens that you find in the birth control pill, for instance, are going to be a lot different than the bioidentical estrogens that we use with hormone replacement therapy in perimenopause and PCOS postmenopause. So I would not say a blanket statement that every woman needs to be on some form of hormones. I would say that it needs to be a tool that every woman has access to, though, especially once you reach a certain age when you are experiencing ovarian dysfunction, when your ovaries are no longer producing these hormones. Every woman needs to have access to a provider that is able to say, okay, well, your ovaries aren't doing this anymore. So let's give you a little bit of supplementing. If your thyroid's not working, you're going to get thyroid medication. So I think that we need to look at it in the same lens.
Okay, that probably makes more sense. Mine was probably an ignorant question, but that's just a thought that came to my head as you were talking about all these different impacts that hormones were having.
Yeah, no, and just like any other medication, it comes with side effects and it's not going to be for everybody. But I think for the vast majority of women, yeah, hormone therapy needs to be an option in our toolkit.
Okay. And you mentioned a few times talking to your provider. The menopause checklist I think is great. What are some other tools that people can take into their provider visit to have these conversations better and maybe be heard more?
The best tool is another person. So the best tool is having a support person there, whether it's a partner or a friend, a sister, someone who can do the heavy lifting of listening while you are allowed to be in that visit and just be in your body, right? Not disassociating. And someone can be there taking notes while you are thinking deeply about your situation and asking questions because it can be a lot and it can be overwhelming when you finally have the space to be heard. And some people are like, well, I don't even know what to ask. And like, oh my God, you've overwhelmed me. I don't even know what you said. So we do, of course, send notes after the visit. But if you have another person that's there, and especially if it's like a partner, they can say, like, oh, and also remember that you were having those night sweats. Like, remember that brain fog, like things that you might not even remember in the moment. Another person is a great tool to have with you during the visit.
I think that's a great idea because, like you said, sometimes we just forget all of these things, or maybe we don't put them together in our own heads. So sometimes we'll go to someone's visit with their orthopedic surgeon or something like that, and we'll kind of chime in and, oh, don't forget that you were talking about this the other day, and don't forget you were talking about this the other day. So I think having somebody else is great because, like you said, it's really overwhelming to both try to get things out of your head and also put things into your head at the same time. So I bet you 9 times out of 10 people leave their visit with their provider and they're taking in 50% of what they hear and maybe only giving out 50% of what they should or could be saying. So I think bringing in that other person is a really great idea.
And it doesn't have to be like IRL, right? Like it could be someone on FaceTime, it could be someone on the phone. But especially like when you have experienced trauma, and that trauma might just be being dismissed in the medical system, that trauma is going to present in that visit, right? And so, what it looks like for my clients, it might be like, okay, you do that exam, you put that speculum in there. I'm just going to be here, but not really, right? But if you have someone there that's able to like hold your hand, that can help to assure that you have safety and that you are fully consented, it allows you to not, again, disassociate.
Okay, that's awesome. So this has been great. So if you wanted to leave people with one piece of health advice or something that you wish everyone knew, what would that be?
I would say the advice is just to trust yourself, to trust your intuition. You live in your body, not me. You know your body better than I know your body, right? And so just really leaning into that. And if you are having providers dismiss you because they feel like, nothing's wrong or they don't have the tools or time to give you what you deserve, keep advocating, keep finding outlets and find the providers that are a good fit for you.
That's a great message. So this has been fantastic, Jenna. So if people are interested or if they're just curious about your message or want to find other things, where can people find you?
Yeah, so we are at Discover Her Health on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff. So it's DISCOVHER, Discover Her Health. And you can also find us at discoverherhealth.com where you can book an appointment, check out some of our products, and learn more about what we offer.
This is great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. This is awesome.